Okay, we're on part 2 where we're going to talk about recording some MIDI parts. So let's start with drums, and we want to make sure our drum track is in record, which it is. And what I like to do is actually record just maybe a couple of measures of drums. And then I can edit those and make copies of those as many as I need for however long I need them. So let me show you how I would do that. Now you can do this either in the sequence editor window or the MIDI editor window. I'm going to choose the MIDI editor window. Also, I'm going to make sure I can see all the MIDI tracks here by clicking on this bottom left corner here to get the track selector. Right now, all we really want to see is the drums, but we could select other instruments once we record them. So we're looking at measures 1 through 3. And if I zoom out, I should say, sorry, I can make that smaller. And so here's 2 measures. Now, since the grid is selected, since the snap to grid is selected here, this is going to allow me to move my cursor up here until it turns into this I-beam. And if I click here and drag, I could select that range of notes. And if I were to just click this button right here, link selection to memory, what that'll do is create a start and stop point here on the memory locations, which means that if I hit the memory cycle button, I can loop this 2-measure loop. Okay, so one way to record drums is just to actually enter the notes manually. I'll show you how to do that. There's a window you can bring out by holding down the Shift and pressing the O key, which is the tool window. And there's a pencil tool that allows you to write notes. And in fact, if you hold down the P button on the keyboard, it'll select that pencil tool for you. If I come over here, hold down P, I get the pencil tool, and I can put a bass drum note. Whoop, that's not a bass drum. Let's try it up here. I think that's a bass drum, maybe. Yep. So I dropped a note on beat 1, a measure 1. And now I could drop another note here if I wanted to by just clicking right there. And just keep doing this for however many notes I want. If I want just a note pattern like that. And let's hear what that sounds like. Now notice it's looping around every time when it gets to the end of the second measure. So maybe you don't want that many. You could actually click on one, hit the delete key, and let's just do a different pattern like this. And then the reason I'm getting right now, what I'm getting for values is eighth notes. And that's because I'm at a certain zoom level, because if I'm at a different zoom level, it's going to give me more subdivisions of the beat. If I'm in auto mode here, if I'm in a fixed mode, it'll give me just whatever subdivisions I have selected here. So if I have, right now I have quarter notes, I could select eighth notes, and you can see how there's more grid lines now. Another thing you can do, if you just click right here, it'll shorten the notes so that to the smallest grid value. So you can get your mouse in the right place. It's a little tricky when they're right together. There we go. I kind of like shorter notes. They don't have to be a certain note length really for drum sounds. So we can also do something else, which is to click on a note. And by the way, when you click on a note, you hear it if you have the speaker icon selected up here. If you don't have that selected, you don't hear it. So I always like to have that on. Another way to create another note, you can just clone this note by holding down Option. You get these two fingers that pop up here when you put your cursor over the note. Now you can drag a note. I'm going to do that here. Drag a note one to the left like that. Make some extra notes here. And we'll do this one over here. Let's hear what that sounds like. So there's the beginning of a drum pattern. And now we can also just clone a note and make a different pitch, which will be a different drum sound. Don't want that one so much. So let's say we want that. But let's make this happen at a different time. So we'll move this over here. And we'll make some different notes here. I'm just doing something random. I have no idea if this is what I want. But see what this sounds like. So you can just keep doing that and for different drum sounds. I'm just trying to find the hi-hat sounds. There's a hi-hat, so I can do hi-hats here. So once again, I'm just going to grab one of these notes and clone it, go up here. And now I want to have that to be 16th notes. So I'm going to change the value up here to 16ths. Make that a little bit shorter. And I can just make a bunch of these. Now one thing I can do is once I get one whole measure of these, I can literally just grab all those as a group and drag them over to the next like that. So if I want just straight 16th notes for these measures, so what might be nice is every so often to have it play like an open hi-hat. So let's just move some of these up to the open hi-hat. I'm just doing this somewhat randomly. So that's one way to create drum patterns. And that's only one way. There's several ways you can do it. You can play them in too, just playing with the click track. And if you do play them in, I'm going to get rid of this by using the Command A key and just deleting all that. You can play them in using the MIDI keyboard and just play with the metronome. So what I would normally do is I would push the overdub button in so every time it loops around, it doesn't record over the notes I've recorded. So that means I can just add notes. And the other thing I would do is turn on the 2-bar count off. And that allows me to get ready to play. So when I hit record, it's going to wait 2 bars and then to go into record. So let's try that. So here we go. I'm going to play some stuff here. And it won't be very good. So brace yourself. Here we go. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 4. Okay, so I recorded some bass notes there. I think they're off the screen, so I'm going to scroll down here. There they are. So I was actually in the C1 octave. Most of these are actually not too bad. There was this one I didn't really play at the right time. Now, so what I could do is just grab that and drag it over. And let me turn off the 2-bar count off. I kind of like that 16th note part. So let's say I like that. I can now add a snare drum track, and I'm gonna do something different this time, which is to use a function that's in the studio menu called input quantize. So I'm going to use this to automatically round off to the nearest grid value. I'm going to use maybe 16th notes because I like to do syncopated parts. So let's try that. What that means is when I play, if I'm off time, it's going to round it to the nearest 16th note. We're going to put the 2-bar count on in, and we'll get ready with the notes here. 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. No, that's kind of interesting, except I don't like these so much. I'm going to move those over to there. And move these over to there and see what that sounds like. Oops, turn off the 2-bar count. I don't want that first one in there either. I'll get rid of that. That's kind of cool. As you could tell, I wasn't playing it perfectly, and yet, it rounded it off, and I can move the note values to wherever I would like. So I'm going to play some hi-hat parts now and try to play some and see how much of a mess I can make with this. So here we go. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of an idea. Now you can add other, drums, so on, to this as you wish. But once you get something you like, then what I like to do is take off the loop and just select this whole group of notes. And the way I like to do that, I just move my cursor up here to get the I-beam tool, drag across that, and then use the command, the copy key, which is here, or you can use the keyboard command, which is Command C. That copies those notes. Now, there's a cool thing you can do. Let's say you wanted to, that's 2 measures. Let's say you wanted to have 12 measures of that. That means you go up to measure 13 with that. And you would just go into the File menu and choose Paste, Repeat. And it puts in a bunch of those for you. So now this keeps on playing. Let me turn off the piano here. And you can go into each one of these measures and make alterations too. So maybe you want to, after 4 bars, change the snare pattern somewhat. Well, you could grab, maybe these snare notes and drag them maybe a 16th note later. See what that sounds like. That's kind of interesting. So anyway, you can manipulate these notes separately, and so you can create different sort of groove parts that are similar to what you started with, but with variations. And one other thing that's kind of a neat little trick is to just grab, maybe a couple of measures, or just a 1 measure of a pattern, and just move it up to a different note value. So that just played the same pattern with different notes or different drum sounds. So there's many things you can do. Another thing that is really interesting to do is to use, let's go to the mixing board. And so this is the MIDI track that we recorded here. If I play it and turn this fader down, you'll hear the sounds go down. So that's controlling the volume of the notes being played back on the drums. And up here we have what are called plugins. So if we can click here, we can add these plugins, which are ways to modify the notes. Groove Quantize does some very interesting things. So let's take a look at that. What a groove does, groove quantization does, it actually creates some timing differences, so it doesn't make everything perfectly on the grid. And also, it will create different accents, so it'll make certain notes louder and certain notes softer. So let's try the laid back one. We'll double click on that and we'll try laid back. These are all different laid back beats we can use. And now we can just audition those as we listen. That's kind of interesting. Or let's try this. Oh yeah, beat division, 16th notes. Let's try that again, and we're gonna go lay back. And we can put the division on 8th notes and see what that sounds like. No, that doesn't sound good. Let's try 16th notes and see. So you can control how much velocity change versus how much accent change here. This controls the timing changes. Let's try that with those a little bit lower. So that's what the groove turned on. Let's listen to it once again with it turned off. Okay, listen to the same thing with it turned on. So it feels more lifelike, more like a real person plays it. Now we've got a good drum pattern. Maybe you want to go on to record a bass part, and we can do the same kinds of things with the bass. And so I hope you get something out of this, and there may be a part 3 coming up. Thanks.